Well, welcome to Moral Side of the News, our weekly discussion of today's top stories from a moral, ethical, and religious point of view. We've been doing this since 1948 on radio and 1952 on television. Welcome again to Moral Side of the News. Joined this week, as always, by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders: Reverend Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition; Deacon Gitschier, St. Patrick Catholic Church; Rabbi Emerita Gaylia R. Rooks, the Temple; Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches; and Richard Uhler, retired U.S. Army chaplain. We begin this week reflecting on the aftermath of the crash of UPS Flight 2976 and the emotional and physical toll it's taken on first responders.
Few can say they've been to the scar south of Louisville's airport, even if you've seen these NTSB clips of the wreckage. Okolona Fire Chief Mark Little
I'll go home and take a shower and get a few hours of sleep and then come back.
spends 36-hour shifts inside.
I want to be here. Like I said, it's for the community, it's for myself.
He's overseeing a slow cleanup.
Because of the size of the incident and all the chemicals that are involved. So yes, we move a little slow, but we're moving as fast as we can.
The night of the fire, Little never saw the MD-11 plane that crashed.
The flames went pretty much that whole half mile.
Burning jet fuel spread to oil tanks. And those went flying.
And then you're worried not only that they've exploded, where are they going to land?
It makes moments like these, when Assistant Chief Jeff Carlson made it home, more precious.
That makes your day. It makes you really happy and proud.
Even with the danger the job brings,
It's a part of you. It never goes away.
Little and his crew return day after day.
So panel, we spent last week really talking a lot about the crash itself, and there's been a lot of discussion on the first responders and the toll it's taken on them. So I thought we'd spend a little bit of this week really thanking them, especially with their relationship with the Crusade for Children. They're so tied to us. I was talking to one firefighter. He was on scene 12 minutes after the first call came out, and you could tell just speaking to him, it's taken a toll on him. So I welcome you all to discuss it. Greg, we can start with you. I know you're intimately close with many of the first responders on scene.
Yes, well, obviously I'm a police chaplain for 5 police departments, but we also have some fire department chaplains that have merged with us. So, you know, I know quite a few of them. I think, you know, I can share with you that I was the first chaplain to respond to the Old National Bank shooting. And well, one chaplain went to the hospital for the people that were rushed there. I went to the crime scene or the incident. And I could see that, you know, when you have 12 people that have been shot in one place, I mean, unless you're military and been in a war type of situation, that's something you don't forget. And I think this situation has to be similar. I did not go out to the UPS crash. I volunteered my services because they were reuniting the families back at the training division of Louisville Police. And I was on standby because I know the toll it takes from the bank incident when somebody shows up and, you know, they got to hear those terrible words. Even as a police chaplain, sometimes I have to go up in the middle of the night and knock on somebody's door. And I know I'm going to change their life forever, you know, and you get a lump in your throat like you don't think you could swallow. And, you know, you have to tell them that, you know, their loved one is not coming home. So these firefighters and the EMS paramedics and the police officers, you know, they were right there. They saw the burn, they saw the wreckage. I hate to say it because I've been in firehouses with fires or cars where victims burned up. The smell is unique, and those are things you just don't forget.
Thank you for sharing. Clay?
Well, I was just rehashing the fire. You know, I had a fire at my house about 4 years ago, so this brings back memories. I've never gotten over that. I probably should have went to therapy because of it, but I never did. But it's something that comes back in the middle of the night sometimes. Just a lot of things just rush back in. So this incident brought some of those memories back, of course, and made them fresh. You know, for the first responders, of course, I can see how going through it, I mean, they go through levels of trauma through the course of their job, but there's levels, and there's catastrophic events of this nature. And so clearly the fire department out of Okolona, chief there, they were on the scene, up close and personal. They see it, they smell it, they go through it. It's just, it can really take its toll, and I can see that it's not just a job for them, it's a personal assignment to and calling to be a part of that, to bring healing any way they can. So that is it's most noteworthy, I think. I happened to have a meeting this past week with Congressman Morgan McGarvey, who had been out to the scene. And I was asking him, I said, what's the scale of the scene, and what did you witness at the scene? He said it's like being at a apocalyptic event, given the level of incineration and level of devastation. Just a swatch going through there. You see pieces of where a vehicle used to be. Now you don't see any evidence of it hardly. So that kind of devastation that you witnessed, that of course the intensity of the jet fuel combined with the oil tanks there, would just created another kind of incineration event that was just horrific. So I mean, I can see how it could take a toll, and probably did take a toll of the first responders. So my heart goes out to them. You know, we love them here on the crusade because for other reasons, but we forget this is what they do on the front line all the time. So just in awe of their service and their commitment and their courage to keep doing what they do for the benefit of the community.
It really is a calling. I mean, when everyone else is running away from danger or a burning building or what have you, they're the ones that run in and try to save lives. It takes a very special, committed person to be able to do something like that. And you know, I think we all take that for granted. I remember how upset I was after years after 9/11. I think it was John Stewart who was speaking on behalf of the first responders who had all kinds of, from the asbestos and things like that, and trying to get them the kind of medical care that they deserved and needed. You're absolutely right. I mean, you know, Crusade for Children, we couldn't do half of what we do, or I don't mean that literally. I'm sure there is enough.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that.
It's 60%
over half
departments bring in.
of what we do. And they just, you know, are such a precious partnership with Crusade. But beyond that, just thinking about what heroes they really are. And of course, our hearts and our prayers go out to the families who lost loved ones. And I mean, just, it's, you know, you said, you know, you're going to change their lives forever with that knock on the door or that phone call, or it's just, I'm glad that people are recognizing how traumatic that is. And, you know, I remember when you had your fire and thinking, it's not just what you see.
Right.
It's a very sensory kind of thing. And, you know, with the smell and the heat that you feel and the sounds and everything. And I know some of them had therapy dogs that were coming in from Indianapolis, I think. And that, you know, I don't think that would work with me because I'm allergic to dogs, so I don't have a, you know, that kind of bond. But, you know, anything that the community can do to help.
Well, I think for me, I'm appreciative of having this opportunity to talk, but for me, it's also a reminder that caregivers need care.
Right.
And this is certainly true of those who are the first responders, but also those who are working in the hospital and having to make some decisions there on, you know, with almost little to no information, but having to make quick decisions. It's true of again, all of us who are any kind of a caregiving situation. I know that it's a reminder to all of us listening, you know, that different people have different needs for care, different way they need it. Some people need to be able to give an opportunity to talk. Sometimes people just need an opportunity to sit with them and maybe inviting them to express themselves, however they might be. Some of it's just artwork. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that people internally try to find ways to cope, but it's hard when you're only in the situation have to kind of shut down right now. And that's true again of even leaders of congregations, and that we need And I know my people sometimes will touch base with me, you know, how you doing, what's going on. But the important thing is that we don't just assume, okay, you'll get over it, because you don't. Just get over it.
And
that's
some
true.
people seem to do well for a while, and then it could be years later, and something will trigger,
flashback, yeah,
and,
be mindful
and whatever.
Of that.
So
be mindful of that. But it's, but just to offer, a listening ear sometimes, or just sitting with people. Sometimes that's caring enough. But to sort that out in your own family, how's it put out in your family? How attentive are you, sometimes to your children or your parents or your grandparents, what they're going through. And that's why I think this is an invitation for all of us to consider this moment, absolutely 100%, but it's a pattern in all people's lives in different levels.
Good point, Greg, too, with knocking on the doors. It never got any easier making death notifications in the military, whether it was a death as a result of something traumatic or whether it was just a normal, natural cause death. It's still going to grip people in a lot of ways. I didn't quite have that same scope of things when I was in my churches, but any catastrophe or event with loss of life, it's a tragedy, and certainly the hopes of prayers are that there will be a road back to normalcy quickly in a lot of ways. And anything that can be done, of course, with those who are working tirelessly to do this particular job is certainly important, and it's a plus in helping them, because they are affected by this as well as even though it might be a slightly different perspective, but they're affected by it as well. And when I was doing suicide intervention model, and we were training facilitators on post, one of the things was self-care. How do you do your own self-care and take care of yourself in light of what has transpired, which is of course another traumatic issue. And then of course when the call comes and you respond to something, there's a sense of anxiety, I'm sure. I haven't been involved in the civilian circuit, but not knowing what to expect on the scene when what you'll encounter. My heart pumped pretty fast the first time I heard the call, medic, when I was in Vietnam. And it did every other time. So.
I think also part of it is for me too, and this is again individual experiences as well and family experiences, that things do go on, but they're changed or different. Like for instance, all of these people who were there that day and all these families, they're going to celebrate Thanksgiving, but it'll be different this year. They're going to celebrate, other family gatherings, religious occasions, birthdays. All these things, they still happen, but people are changed, and it's a little different. And to find a way to still gather, and maybe it isn't in the storytelling, maybe it's in the remembering, but that something's going to be different. The food's not going to be the same. Somebody's going to be missing. There'll be an empty seat. And whether it's because of this particular horrific tragedy or for other tragedies, but still, we do need to find that new balance, and that's not always easy, and that takes time. Maybe it's not this Thanksgiving, next Thanksgiving. We're trying to figure out how that plays itself out. Is all part of that, caring for oneself and caring for other caregivers too.
We write it. Mentioned Thanksgiving. We write it at the doorstep. Holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas is always a bittersweet time for a lot of people. Not everybody celebrate holidays for a variety of reasons, because of the sadness connected with some personal trauma. So it sometimes is a mixed season of celebration and sadness that is thrust upon people to adapt and adjust and endure in many respects in a way. So you have tragedies like this thrown on top of the season that is already going to be iffy in a lot of respects. So I think it's good for us to be sensitive to that in our celebration, to be mindful of those that are not necessarily in the celebration mode, and just how they're able to survive, how they're able to get through this day. They may just wanted to hurry up and get through it so they can keep going. So it just reminds us that we just take so much for granted, and we are indeed have cause to be thankful for something. And these tragedies like this underscore this. Of course, you never know. It could have been us. We could have been out there for God's reason. We've heard the story of Chicken Little, the sky's falling away. In this case, it did fall. And they didn't see it coming, had no way to avoid it, had no way to hide from it. It just, boom, it just happened just like that.
That's why we tell people to keep your house in order.
Right.
Because we all have expiration dates. We just don't know when they come up. Right. I'm really hoping, and I suspect they will, UPS and the city of Louisville will give these folks an opportunity to grieve together if they want to, in a group setting, because they've all had to deal with this horrible news where they tragically lost a loved one. So if they would have a monthly meeting or therapy sessions or whatever, I think that's very important. And I'd like to encourage your listeners that watch this show that if you know any of these families, and even if you don't, perhaps you could step up and do something for them, if they belong to your church, or if they're in your neighborhood, or whatever the case may be, and cook a meal for them or whatever. Your kids can invite their kids to something. But, I just had 2 funerals today. It's just ironic that I'd had 2 in one day. But, I always tell people at the funeral, everybody wants to help the family that first week. Let me know what I can do. I'll send you some food. Let me, just call me if you need me. But you got to call them in a month later, or 3 months later, or a year later, and and check on them, because that's very important. And Louisville wants to think of itself as a big city. I do too. I grew up in New York and worked in LA, but I want to think of Louisville as a big city. But it's really a small town when something like this happens, because you start seeing the people step up, people sending, at Old National Bank, people were sending pizzas and dropping off coffee and, sandwiches and stuff right away. That hours later, the people just want to help. And that's what I think makes Louisville so special, that people just want to step up and help. So I think that's an awesome thing for us.
And also financially. I heard one news report about a man whose business, he doesn't know when he's going to get to open it again. At the time, he hadn't even been able to see inside. But this is, if he doesn't have business coming in, he doesn't have money coming in. And the whole community, well, not the whole community, but, Louisville, as we know at Crusade for Children, is a very generous community. And so people have been contributing to those families who have been impacted financially by what happened.
They just had I think a telethon yesterday for Dare to Care.
Dare to Care, yes.
I just had Vincent Jane, who's our guest on our radio show that the weekend. And because of what's going on with the shutdown and so forth, it makes us just aware there's a lot of people going through some desperate times right now. And so there is a need to dare to care. Be creative in it. Ask God to guide us. How can I be creative in the way that we give? I didn't know that. I didn't think that I thought that giving a canned good or something is a good way to give. He said, no, just give $1. Give some money. I can do more with $1 you can with $1. So find a way that you can dare to care through some vehicle that can maximize your caring. Be a care bearer, for lack of a better term. And just do what you can. And if you care, you'll find a way to care. You'll find a way to express it.
And express gratitude. In the Jewish tradition, the first words you say in the morning when you wake up, even before the Shema, the Hear O Israel, is a prayer, moda ani. It's not ani modeh or moda, I am thankful. It's inverted. It's thankful am I. So that the first word that comes out of your mouth every day is thank you, God, for causing my soul to return to me, and in great compassion and loving kindness, you are giving me another day. And, you know, that sets you on the, well, how am I going to use this day? Who can I help? What righteous deed can I do? And there's always something. Always be grateful and always do something.
As I was listening to the conversation, I was taken back by Richard and Greg when you were talking about your history, 20 years as a Secret Service agent, and you're willing to give up your life to protect the President of the United States and our country. You, when you're on the battlefield in Vietnam, the same, willing to give up your life to save someone. And now, full reversal, you're knocking on doors with this kind of information. Like, who takes care of you all in those situations? It's something Father Bill touched on too. But who's taking care of the caretakers?
Yep.
Like, do you have a network of?
As a Catholic deacon, we are supposed to have spiritual advisors and people that we talk to. Since I'm a rough, tough guy, I don't need that, you know. and
they need it most.
And it wasn't. Yeah, I'm being facetious. And it was the 15 plus years of being a police chaplain here in Louisville, with all the homicides and suicides and accidents that we had. It never seemed to affect me until it was young people that had committed suicide. And I don't want to go into any details because I don't know whose family could have been connected. But when a young person in, like, you know, elementary school takes their own life, that is very hard to see. It's hard for the officers that responded to try to start CPR. It's hard for the family members, you know, and the fellow students. And that opened up a door from 25 plus years ago as a young patrolman on Dixie Highway where a teenager took his life, which is something I've never thought about for 25 plus years, but this door opened that door. And my wife looked at me and said, you got to talk to somebody because you're not your usual smart aleck self that we're all used to. You're not eating very good. I know you're not sleeping because you get up all the time. I said, you got to go talk to somebody. And she was 100% correct. So there are some very good first responder type therapists, which I encourage other first responders to find one. And I think it's very important that, because we do kind of lock these things away, and you know, but when you're in this line of work, and those firemen, I can tell you right now, the firemen I spoke to said at one point when they first got there, they were curious if they were going to make it out alive because that fire was expanding so quick, and they were already committed, and they're trying to, you know, circle it and cut, you know, knock it down. And, you know, they told me an interesting thing, because I had people say, why do they keep saying these fires keep popping up a day or two later? It's because there's so much evidence in those ashes and maybe possibly people's remains in there. They can't take a power hose and wash it down the sewer, right? So people didn't understand that there's still some lot of maybe evidence from the plane or DNA or whatever, bones. So, but you know, those firefighters are right there, like you said, in the line of fire, so to speak, and they wondered about their safety for a while. So,
well, it's like 911, of course. That trauma is just revisiting again. There was a similar trauma. You know, Jesus did make a statement that gives context to what we're going through now. He says, physician, heal thyself. And he meant a lot in that one utterance, no doubt, because the first responders, those that give care, need care. So in some way, you know, it may not be the same way, but you do need it in some way. So whatever that is, you need to go ahead and tend to that. I understand when people who are in services like that, they may have some alcohol issues themselves. They may have some other issues themselves because it's a way of coping with the uncopable. The trauma is so horrible that you have to cope some way just to get through it. So there's a challenge and a prayer for the physician not only to heal themselves, but to seek healing for themselves as well.
Yeah. And also, too, on that same line, as you alluded to, sometimes some coping mechanisms aren't healthy.
Right.
Masking it, covering it up. And again, if you're attentive to someone you deeply love, and this is in general, to say, I'm observing this, I'm concerned, I will accompany you, but let's look into ways that we can address this concern that I have for you and for your health at this time. Not to just, oh, well, they'll get over it, or just temporary. Well, no, you set in place a pattern that becomes much more destructive and hurtful, too, as well, to the caregivers.
I like to say that the more you sweep under the rug, the bigger that stumbling block becomes. And the day is going to come when you're just going to trip over it. And
it's a good analogy, yeah.
I think having best of both worlds, we had each other type thing. So as medics, we had other medics. As chaplains, we had other chaplains. When I was in social work, we had the other social workers to kind of upbuild each other. And that's, I think, a lot of help with that type of care. And then and again, like I mentioned before, with suicide intervention, doing your own self-care as well.
It made me think about MASH. I wasn't a big fan of MASH, but MASH was extremely popular for a long time. But it just opened a window into what really goes on, and it exposed the various coping, rather bizarre methods they use just to cope in extremely horrific circumstances. And, it might seem comical to us, but it made a lot of sense to them just to get them through what they were going through, maintain some level of sanity. It was no more than putting an olive in a martini glass. It was just whatever it was that helped them, feel a sense of normalcy. I can understand it.
Yeah. We really don't have time to move on to another topic. This was a very good conversation. Any final thoughts on we're going into 2 weeks. The victims, we learned all of their names this week. I'm hoping that the community will put on a memorial service for the entire, now that we know everyone's names. But
Last night was the opening ceremony for the Festival of Faiths, the Center for Interfaith Relations annual Festival of Faiths, and there was a poet, I want to say Karen Blake, but I'm not positive that was her name, but she got a standing ovation. She read this incredible, incredible poem, which I'm sure you can find online. It had layers and layers and layers of meaning to it, but she started it by reading every single name of those who perished in the crash. And God, what an incredible poet she is.
Shawn, since I'm half clergy and half cop, I have to say, be very careful who you're donating your money to, because unfortunately there are lowlifes in this world that will take advantage of you. And so make sure you're giving, if you make a money donation, make sure you're going to the right spot. Do a little research on that.
That's please. A great to bring up. Well, thank you so much for your conversation today. It was very, very good, and I think good for the community. So thanks for all those watching and listening. Thanks to our panel, Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Deacon Greg Gitschier, St. Patrick Catholic Church, Rabbi Emerita Gaylia, our Rooks with the Temple, Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches, and Richard Uhler, retired U.S. Army chaplain. Thanks for watching and listening to Moral Side of the News this week. Join us again next week for an all-new Moral Side of the News.